I'm sharing now about inner child. So we all have to heal our inner child because just the fact that it's my Hebrew birthday today. When I was born, I was in the ICU for neonatals, and they wouldn't let me go home. There was a risk. I had the cord wrapped around my neck. I was 3 weeks late. I had breathed amniotic fluid. I came out sideways. So that in and of itself, even if somebody didn't have some birth imprint from a difficult transition into the physical world from being in the womb, that watery space to being in the air space, change in gravity and warmth and comfort and sight and senses, we also are experiencing constantly other people's expectations of us, societal, cultural, and then the wounded people around us dealing with their own pain and suffering. So even in the most compassionate framework, to heal that, what do we call child, that one that doesn't know, and then has to cope with being in a world of the unknown. So we still have an inner child even as an adult. And also some of my support coming from a group called Living Deeply, where we're like a cohort, and we talk about ways in which we're learning how to live deeply with ourselves. So the inner child is a very deep place inside of us. All the programming that we got, which at times could have been from outdated beliefs, is our responsibility, even if it wasn't our fault. So starting with, the inner child. The inner child will tell me about other people's health and awareness, and also if they're using me, have agendas, whether there is suspiciousness, doubt, or lack of trust. It was perverted, but it's been sterilized, and now I can ascertain whether the person is on the same side, the true nature of being, by whether they engage with care for themselves and by extension, me. So in other words, is this person trustworthy? Children have a very deep, basic understanding, and we all have that ability. Knowing the observer changes the reality. The fact that there is an observer, children know that when someone's watching them, how it feels. They want to be watched. They want someone to see what they're doing. So they want attention. So it yields this natural modesty and the lack of neediness. It makes us feel safe and special. We don't end up being clingy or aversive, which happens when there's enough nourishment, whether it's attention or even other things like food or love or money. There's also a societal shift in how human life is consciously perceived when a child is treated as life. This is precious life, coming into the world. And there's also these honoring sentiments and efforts and trophies, and this watery fluid, like the lack of boundaries, the innocent trust of the balanced exposure and protection. There's a circuitry with the allness rather than just one spout. Like instead of someone getting attached to just getting it in one place, kids do cling to their parent, and at the same time are open. The healthy inner child is open to all the other forms of life connecting, whether it's a butterfly, another person, a dog. And it's very important to heal the inner child because we see a lot of children growing up right now that are not healthy bonding, that are overwhelmed by senses, and there's a lot we can do about it. Like the yes and attitude, the I can attitude, rather than always teaching a child no or you can't. Sharing, all about sharing and not competing for goodness. Sharing and not competing is that there's enough, and even the idea that it's okay to make mistakes. There's room to grow, there's time. Okay, you cracked an egg when you were trying to help mama make the food, but you're not going to get in trouble. Oh, you made Papa wait a minute because you were walking slow, carrying something very carefully, but you didn't get screamed at. So there's this idea that in the context, there's a backdrop of values that emulate private achievement and self-care so that everyone gains a level of comfort with trying. This trying way. It's like we're a work in process. There's a grace. It's worth it to try many times if you enjoy it. Like when you learn how to play an instrument, it sounds kind of wretched when you first start with the violin, but then eventually it sounds so hauntingly beautiful. So when we share, for a kid, it could be games, toys, but we know as we get older, it's our food, it's our music, activities, places, dancing, money, time. This idea that we don't have to be either ashamed of our bodily reactions. We can trust our physical responses to stimuli. A kid, if they touch something hot, they go, ow! No one has to make fun of the kid. Ah! Like siblings sometimes teach each other, you sound funny, but in a healthy environment, it's normal to express yourself by the stimuli. If it's too bright, you could go, But when kids have to repress, our inner child had to survive by repressing, and maybe there were too many kids around, or the parents were very limited, maybe there was a health crisis, another sibling was very difficult. We often didn't get that ability to just express ourselves. It was shamed, it was mocked, it was pushed out, it was rejected. So we stopped reacting properly. But these releases are natural and appropriate, and it becomes trauma if we can't process what happened and how people behaved and how we're actually showing up in the world. So, people are not allowed to, cry or laugh, but actually that ends up causing this crying and laughing energy to get stuck. So again, we don't have to master everything or give up. We're learning about life. We're learning how to live in the process, from the journey. We don't have to be like perfect yet. When a kid is doing a performance of the parents, like, look at these dance moves I made up. It doesn't have to be perfect and better than what's on TV, for example. We have to live in the real world, We don't have to give either special privileges to someone just because they're named something or have physically expressed genes that are recognizable, even if they don't reciprocate or deserve based on their integrity, behavior, and treatment. Like a person, just because they're blonde and blue-eyed doesn't give them a special reason, or just because somebody's white or black or any of these things, express genes on the outside. And now I'm going to move into living deeply. The idea of having a new song, right? A new frequency, a new tune. Coming from, where am I? Am I in the inner child? Am I in the adult? Am I in the trapped emotion? What would it be like to be lighter versus carrying the world on our shoulders? Like everyone's opinions, a little kid carrying all this has to become hyper competent, has to grow up too fast. We say like, oh, they're so precocious. Usually that inner child's going to need some attention later on, right? So what would life be like if I wasn't in pain, or leaning too far into the future? How could I hold my own head up, versus someone holding their head down, just not to get in the way, not to cause too much attention, because attention could start to become associated with being abandoned or neglected. Like if I come to you to ask for attention, you push me away. Better I stay close than try to get anything more, even if I really need it. Trusting also that I'll be light enough for the new song. So let's say the song is like, versus, oh. They come from different places, right? So just the idea that could let go of what we're holding and try to see if we can get lighter. We can let the spiritual healing involve our fascia, our muscles, and these release that old holdings and the weight that we used to hold ourselves in place in certain ways in order to cope, in order to survive. And also recognize that these patterns kept us grounded to be in the old. As we relax into the heart more, infusing these tendencies like that come to criticize, trying to keep us safe, and to conform, there's the undercurrent of service out of love and care, building up positive energy, draining ourselves rather than draining ourselves with overthinking and overanalyzing, and sometimes knowing when enough is enough and how to stop. This is how to wisely number our days, right? And we can face our anxiety around endings. A lot of fear comes from like, oh, it'll be missing, or I will stop, or it will stop, or life. But there's this flow. We look at our veins, our arteries, our nerves, lymph. I mentioned the blood with the blood vessels, but there's a life force energy system. And there is, again, like I mentioned with the inner child, there's no need to compete with others' external accomplishments. Like if you're just starting out guitar, don't look at someone who's been playing 10 years. The other expected mainstream, either kind of time frame, like whether it's the age, let's say someone's starting to be a ballerina at age 60. Don't start comparing them to people who have been starting at 6 and are 60. So instead, we have to see how unconventional one's accomplishments are, and that these gifts are from wounds. Like the child that never got to be the ballerina that finally chooses at age 60. That goes way deeper than the superficial milestone. Someone who's on the way, has recreational activities, gets married, has kids, has a car. If someone who didn't imagine this ever for themselves had these activities, it's like this moving, this flowing, this shape-shifting, tapping in and completely loving and accepting the self, and even becoming ready and becoming to be more selfish, not to be a distraction or a quick fix for others, even like to live for ourselves as an inner child. Healing is huge. The past self that had to be a user of others also, like manipulating. In other words, we start to learn about our intentions, our schedules, and whether we check things off a list and have tasks, or whether we're sacrificing, our time, our energy for everyone. Sacrifices can also be what we don't know how to use yet, or what's as is, if it feels damaging. Like it doesn't mean just giving our best, most beautiful offerings. It means where we're at. Like if all you know how to do is play the guitar and it doesn't really sound great, but that's what you're offering up. That's your offering. That's okay, because the heart is the altar for everything. So as we also, look at, like, are we enjoying it? Does it feel good? Or are we doing what's right because we think we have to? And starting to use that energy inside of the circuits where we don't end up playing catch up every time, when we extend or we flex. Like, so we extend out or we flex in within the transactions, interactions, and exchanges. Sometimes reactions are implosive, they like inside, or outside, explosive. And that's how we lose power or get overstimulated. So we're not gonna, like, as the inner child heals, we don't waste anything. We know it's so precious. In chemistry, they call it endothermic reaction when the explosion goes in, implosion, and exothermic when it goes out. These connections are not worthless or meaningless. We use that energy, right? We use it well. And so I'm going to stop here. And I'm wishing us all on my Hebrew birthday to live deeply and to heal the inner child and to really know and relate to and remember and learn our creator, source of life, our breath master, the well of the force, and to feel whole and complete and peaceful in all aspects, body, mind, heart, soul, social, all our loved ones, and that we have purpose and meaning and really connect with that spark that many call Messiah, Mashiach, that's in everyone and in the oneness. And to have beauty and to see beauty outside and inside as a way of merging into the designer path and blueprint of life. Different forms. And with respect and trust and kindness, may we bond deeply, really, and sincerely with all aspects of the whole, the external and the internal. Amen.